Hey everyone, Mark here at Lowen University. This is lesson 159. In this lesson, I'll be addressing some of the common reasons that we tense up when playing live and a couple remedies I've found over the years that have really helped me to ensure I have a smooth sailing live show and that the stage doesn't feel too much different than practicing at home. And a couple ways I've really bridged that gap. So this lesson comes in by request. Again, if you have a request for any lesson you would like to see, find the requests button on the top of the page, send your request in, and we will work it into our production queue. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this lesson request off and we'll talk about it. So this one reads, one topic I'd like to request is based on technique and how standing up and playing live is different from sitting down. What adjustments are needed? I always get a stiff forearm while I play live, but during practices, sitting or standing, it's all good. I know that sounds weird. So right off the bat, I'm going to address this point that if you tense up when playing live, if your forearm is stiff, standing up playing live, but when you stand up or sit while practicing and you don't feel stiff, that just means that's purely as a result of playing live. Now understand that we all tense up when we play live. It's human nature. It's part of the adrenaline and the rush and the pressure of playing a live show. Whether it's really high pressure or not, you're performing in front of people. You're in this whole different mode. And that's something you can never get good at by any other means than just doing it more. There is no shortcut for that. Trust me, you just have to play more. But these are a couple of the remedies I'll talk about have really helped me to, again, have that really seamless transition between practice and playing live. But the added pressure, the nerves, you're going to tense up. When you're playing a live show, you're making every note count. You're putting every fiber of your being into playing bass. And you might think, well, I'll tense up a little bit when playing live. You'd be surprised how much you really tense up. Every muscle is just completely invested into it. And you just have to tell yourself it's a live show. I know that's easier said than done, but you have to constantly think about staying relaxed. Even to this day, I always find myself telling myself, okay, just play still, breathe. Don't tense up. You're playing too hard. You're digging in too hard. You're moving around more than you need to as far as technique. You just have to constantly, throughout your performance, bring yourself back down to the ground. I assure you that's your reason, especially if you're only finding that problem playing live, okay? Now, a couple points I'll realize is that when it comes to the actual technique adjustments, I talk about strap height in an earlier lesson. It's lesson number 7. I checked before I filmed this, so go check out strap height and posture. Very crucial points in there about keeping a consistent strap height where your bass feels the exact same when sitting or standing. I'll demonstrate that real quick. You'll notice right now the way my strap is adjusted, it may look like my thigh is supporting the bass, but if I lean back, you'll notice it comes off. So it's not supporting the bass, it's just sort of resting on it right now. But if I took my leg away, the bass doesn't move. If I stand up, the bass is in the exact same position as it is sitting down. You'll notice if I play something, you'll notice my technique. I have a very slight bend in my wrist, a healthy fretting hand technique. My forearm is parallel to the ground. Slight bend in my plucking hand. I've always had that, but this is a comfortable feeling for me technique-wise. If I stand up with this strap height, I'm able to recreate all of those same things. Okay, but if you like the rock look, you don't want to look nerdy like Michell does, I'm getting better about lowering my strap height, but just understand it comes with a give and take. If you lower your strap big time, you sling your bass pretty low, it's not about what adjustments do I need to make. It's purely a matter of figuring out how to adjust, because this changes the entire playing field of your technique. All of those same things I point out in my technique are now gone. I have this very sharp bend in my wrist now. I commonly rest my forearm in the back of the bass, so if I were to try to recreate that, I would have to do this. And I can't do this, so now I have to play with this very straight wrist that I'm not used to playing. I don't really have a fulcrum point, my floating thumb sort of angles thrown off. And to compensate for this sharp bend in my fretting hand, I now have to kind of hang the bass more like this, which changes my right hand technique even more. If you're using a pick, it's even more. I mean, trying to get that pick attack, you know. So you'll notice that just changing my strap height throws all of this out of whack. So that's just something you have to ask yourself. What's the cost to benefit of lowering your strap? Throws your technique in a tailspin. It probably will cause some pain if you're not careful, but it looks cooler. So strap height for me has been all about finding that balance. I don't have that perfect one-to-one ratio of exact strap height when sitting. I kind of lowered a little bit, but I understand I've had to make slight adjustments. The next point I'll bring about is that a lot of us in the modern age, your posture might be worse than you think. My posture is horrible. It's something I've had to work on. We're on our phones all the time, we're at a computer, we're just in this hunched over position. And I find myself when I'm playing live, and you might do this too, but just the weight of the bass pulling on your shoulders, a lot of us will, without realizing it, kind of lean back to like compensate and push our guts out and kind of have our bass just like that. I see a lot of people doing that. I'm very guilty of that. And what that does is it pushes the fretboard away from you, so now you can't really see it. So I find myself having to bend over and hunch over, and it just creates a posture nightmare. So one thing I kind of do is you have to sort of take your pelvis and push it forward, okay? And kind of push the bass more like this. I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. If I put my strap height back the way I normally have it, it's easy between songs or you're waiting a sound check, we'll kind of slouch back and do this number. Now I can't even see the fretboard. So I have to stand up straight and kind of use my pelvis, which is the correct way you should stand. Kind of push forward. That way I can kind of see my fretboard. Okay, and it's all about recreating that practicing sitting down versus playing live standing up. Okay? Another very overlooked thing is that when you're practicing in your bedroom, it's very easy to always hear yourself very well. You're in complete control of your levels. Your bass can be louder than your music coming out of your iTunes or whatever. When you go play live, there's 1,000 other variables in the mix now. Probably the biggest one is just standing next to an acoustic drummer. Most of us. You can't compete with that volume. And the first thing that goes away is the lows. You lose the lows, and I'm very guilty of this too. You start sound checking, your bass sounds very thin, and as soon as your bass starts sounding thin, that's like a bass player's immediate trigger to start digging in harder to recreate those full notes. That's when you tense up. That contributes to all of the uncomfortable aspects of playing live, okay? So whether it means getting more lows in your monitor or turning up your amp but playing lighter as a balance, you just got to be able to feel those lows. It's very important. If you're using in-ears and you have a perfect stereo mix in your ears, not all of us have that all of the time. Every venue doesn't have the capability to do that. Every type of gig isn't outfitted for that. So you have to adapt. But just understand, again, like I said, playing live is just something you can't prepare for. You just have to do it, learn what to listen for. But a little trick of the trade I've learned is that playing with this rig, if your combo amp or your rig or your head has the capability of a pre or post functionality, if your preamp has that, it's a very common setting on amps, but basically what it's saying is that if you're running an XLR out, so that would be running a cable out of here into the snake to feed to the front of the house so they can pump it through the PA. Sometimes there's a switch called pre or post. Pre, meaning it gives them a signal that bypasses the EQ in the preamp, all these knobs, and just gives them a flat, dry signal out to the front of house. Pushing in post means it runs it now through the EQ. So if I'm on pre, that means no matter what EQ adjustments I make, they're getting a flat signal. Whereas post, that would now affect the signal. So on stages, on tours I've been on where I realized this is going to be one of those stages where the bass is just sort of drowned out. Concrete stages are really bad about that. Hollow stages, I tend to have an amplification effect with the subs. But concrete or harder stages, the bass sounds very thin. I'll actually change my setting to pre, give them a flat signal. That way, the only thing coming out of these speakers is what I'm doing with this EQ. And I'll dime my lows, like not all the way, but I'll turn the bass knob really loud. That way, every note I play has massive bass on it, and I can now feel myself again. And whenever you feel that full sub-bass quality of your bass playing, you're less likely to dig in, because that's what we're used to hearing as bass players. So attributing all of this to the fact that you might be tensing up because you either can't hear yourself, you're nervous, your strap height is throwing your technique out of tailspin, all of these contribute to the fact that you're playing harder, you're tensing up. So you just have to play more live shows. But I guarantee you, just purely based on what you sent in, your technique is not at fault here. Check your strap height, play more live shows, and you will be well on your way to having a very comfortable experience on stage, all right? Try it out. We'll see you next time.